video. This week we are at the fantastic Road Atlanta circuit, America, where we'll be watching some fantastic racing with the GTEs. I think it's safe to say that this track is a fan favourite for at least two people in the league. Everyone else may not agree, but it leads to some fantastic racing. And as you can see here in the background, there's been some practicing going on, and we have found pretty much every place possible where you can flip the car and roll it. Sorry for the VR recording here, but I hope you enjoy the outtake. So a bumper 12-car grid stage being led off by Mr. Dan Slattery with a qualifying time of 1:15.168. Just behind him we have the returning and fantastic Will Thomas. And behind them, the man, the myth, the legend, Ricky Worrell has returned to grace us with his presence. Behind him we have Jeff, followed by Jamie, a Canadian or American. You'll tell me off for whichever one you're not. It's Steve Lakota. And behind them we have Chris, followed by Paul, followed by another Chris, and then we have Nelson and Steve, and finally we have Brian, who didn't set a time. Way through, and everyone looks like they're through safely so far. As they continue down the hill, and someone's died there in the background. Let's go and have a look and see who's dead. You see through turn 5, I think this is, Chris comes and he just loses the back end on that Porsche. Lots of weight there sloshing around the back. Manages to just about keep it together though, and yeah, it looks a bit more dramatic than it actually was as he comes side by side. Steve's going to make his move. He dives down the inside. What a fantastic driver that young man is. And down the straight the leaders come. Look, you see them all snaking behind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've lost count. Off they go. Chris and Steve side by side here as they come up to the S's. And here the leaders come, I promise. Here they are. That's Dan, followed by Will, and the rest of them are coming through. Now we're going to look through the back here and see has Chris made a move on Steve. He has. He's gone through. He's locked up and he's slid through. And he slid into Steve's DMs there, and he's got the job done. Meanwhile, as they come up to turn 1 here, you can see the cars coming through. A bit of a gap coming up from there. Whoever's in P6 and P7 there. They come through nicely up into T1, up the hill. Looks like it may have been a move on the outside there by, I think that might have been Paul on someone. And as the cameraman focuses on Mr. Ricky Worrell here as they go down the compression, up the hill. Oh, look at how, well, that's very wide there by Mr. Will Thomas. But they're through safely, at least the top 6 here. We've got Slattery followed by Will, followed by Ricky, and I believe that may be Jeff behind them. I will check in a minute, I confirm. But through safely they come. So we jump forward a couple of laps here to lap 5, and you can see Mr. Will Thomas trying to make a move around the outside of Dan Slattery. All looks good so far. Oh, so netcode has sent Mr. Slattery into the wall there. Meanwhile, that's a spin, that's a crash, that's... Oh God, it's all going on. Let's take a look what happened there. So we join our camera angle here as we can see that just some really random netcode there unfortunately set Mr. Dan Slattery out. Didn't seem to affect Will at all as they come round. Dan's just off. Oh, you can just about see him coming back on track on the left hand side there. Meanwhile, Ricky, I believe we call this a bit of spinpathy. Easy for you to say, as he loses the rear end of that Beamer. Kind of makes me want to have a cigarette. And yeah, he just lets, I believe that's Jeff Sharp through. Meanwhile, everyone else behind just says thank you very much. They'll say the freebies. So wounded Mr. Dan Slattery returns onto the track, and as you can see, his car's a bit dodgy. He's now decided he's going to take a completely different track. Yeah, I think less said about that the better. And there he is, and there he's gone. So we can see Ricky come through here. Oh, it looks like Chris Palmer's going to make a move on Nelson, is he? No, he backs out, but through they go. Over the hill, we can see Nelson still in the lead with Chris in front of Chris and Steve just behind. And here comes Brian. I have to apologise. Everything is going absolutely tits up here with this replay, so I've got no idea who's who or where's where. But that is Jamie. He's there. I believe that's Stephen behind him because it is the Porsche's week, or it isn't the Porsche's week. Every week's a Porsche's week. Oh, and Ricky's gone off there. Let's go and see what happens. So we jump on behind Jeff Sharp here as we fly up the hill. See someone's just come out of the pits there. That might be Ricky, or it might not be Ricky, I'm not sure. Oh, Ricky's gone there. The person on the right's for Jeff's gone through, and that I believe that gives the lead to Mr. Jeff Sharp. No, he's not. He's in second place behind Will. I will get something right in a minute. Now, we haven't mentioned him much, but here's Mr. Brian Dodd, who's been struggling a little bit today, unfortunately, and now he's really struggling, unfortunately. As you can see, that Ferrari turns into a more of a Fiat, and yeah, that's going to be it for this race for you, Brian, unfortunately. And we jump on board with Mr. Chris Palmer here, who seems to be very short for his age. Work that one out. Anyway, he's chasing down Nelson. Will he be able to make a move here? Through the left-hander they come, and it looks like Nelson's gone wide, and Chris says thank you very much. He is through, and that, yeah, BMW power giving Chris some Vorsprung duck technique. Meanwhile, here comes Mr. Thomas. He's through and in the lead. Mr. Jeff Sharp behind him, chasing him down. And then we have Jamie and Steve Lakota. I will say your name right one day, maybe. I believe that's Ricky, who's recovering, or it might be Paul. Who knows? It's one of them. Yes, and then we got Chris Palmer, followed by Nelson, by Chris Hulse, and there's Steve. And that's all of our races still left at the moment. Oh, no, there's Brian. It might have got the timeline a bit wrong here. Who knows? I have to apologise, the timeline really is screwed up here. But here's Mr. Will Thomas coming to take the last lap. And as you can see, Barney is going mad there, waving his white flag like some kind of giving up Frenchman. And there's Mr. Sharp. And here's Jamie and Steve. And here's Ricky. He's decided that he's going to wave the flag for Ricky and Steve. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, let's see how that all finished up. Okay, so our race ended up there with Mr. Will Thomas winning the race after, I think it's 20 laps or so. Jeff Sharp was a good 8 seconds behind. We then had a good battle, race-long battle between Jamie and Steve Lakota, which ended up with Jamie, the victor. Ricky, with his sympathy, ended up in 5th. Behind them, we had 2 Chris's, with Chris Palmer finishing ahead of Chris Hulse. Paul Nicholson was there somewhere. And behind him, a lap down, we had Steve Everson. Nelson ended up finishing about 4 laps down. Brian was 6 laps down. And Dan Slattery, with his ghosting car, ended up finishing 16 laps down. Well, hopefully race 2's replay will not be as screwed up as race 1's, and we'll get a little bit more of a coherent story going along. But this is me recording, so you've probably got more chance of Lord Pendlebury popping at some point with his baby. Anyway, the results, of course, caused the grid to be a reverse championship grid to start off at race 2. None of that made any sense, but anyway, on pole, because of his first race of the season, and because he is known as Race 2 Poleman, Ricky Worrell is on pole, with Nelson Verdier in 2nd, Paul and Steve are in 3rd and 4th, Brian and 2nd Steve are 5th and 6th, Chris and Chris are 7th and 8th, Jamie and Jeff are 9th and 10th, and behind them we have Will and Dan, and we'll have to see how those two get on after their first race incident. Okay, so we follow them as they launch off the line, and we can see that Ricky's got a great getaway with Nelson just behind them. Looks like Steve and Steve are side by side as they go through turn 1, and looks like someone's gone off there right at the start. Not quite sure what happened there. Steve and Steve still side by side. This is going to get difficult to say, and they're still side by side. Some good action here in the background though, as we focus on a car who's doing nothing. Let's see if we can get a better camera. Oh, looks like Steve's still ahead of Steve there, with Chris ahead of Chris, and Nelson's in there somewhere as well. And Jeff is as well. I don't know. Oh, that's painful. Oh, he's going to take him across. And Chris, that's going to hurt a lot there. I'm apologising if you can hear the budgie in the background. But anyway, it looks like Brian here is trying to hang it round the outside. It looks like anything could happen. Looks like Steve's got ahead of Steve in front. We'll have we'll go back and take a look at that in a second. Looks like there's two cars side by side there again. Oh, it's all going on, but it looks like we're going to try and focus on Brian here as he goes down the inside. Is he going to hold that? It looks like he is for the moment. Looks like Chris Palmer's trying to make his way through again. Oh, very slow exit there by Brian. Causes Chris to check up. Let's try and catch up here and see what happened there on that first lap. So we're going to follow Steve here on the fantastic drone cam as we see them go up the S's, and we can see that, yeah, they're all a bit side by side at the moment, or they sort it out, sorry, as they go up towards the double right-hander. Yeah, and as they come down the straight here, you can see that Steve goes around the outside of other Steve and hangs it round there beautifully. That's a great move there by Steve on Steve. Steve tries to hang it on the inside, but Steve goes around the outside still. Well held there as they go up towards the right-hand kink and back towards the next chicane. And we're in chicane view here, so we can see what got sorted out where and when. They'll get here eventually, I promise. Oh, and here's Ricky. There's Nelson. There's Steve. And I believe that's, I can't remember, making a move on Steve. And they're all through. And is that Mr. Slattery and Jamie? And here's Mr. Chris Hulse in a battered BM. So on lap 2 here, it looks like Jamie's going to try and make a move on Chris. Goes down the inside, but Chris hangs it round the outside nicely as they climb the hill up to the left-hander. And here's my food, so I'll be back in a minute.
20 minutes later.
Dinner done, that's diet ruined, and let's open a can of beer, and let's carry on. So we're joining action here with Stephen going round the inside of Nelson, which then turns Nelson onto the inside. Stephen likes to make it too wide wherever he can around those curvy bits. And we can see, yeah, I can't remember who's who. It's been that long, that food was that nice. But anyway, looks like Stephen's tucked in nicely here, so he's going to try and make a move around the outside again like he did on Steve earlier. Looks like that way. Now is Nelson going to let him have it, or is this going to carry on being some fantastic racing? Looks that way. Steve and Jeff there in very similar cars, just to make my life even more difficult. And yes, I am Steve. That makes no sense. So it looks like, yes. Tucks in nicely. Jeff's going to make a move on Steve here. He pulls on the inside. Oh, they've gone 3 wide. Stephen, Nelson, and is that Ricky? I think so. Oh, it's Dan Slattery, isn't it? Sorry. Yes, I keep forgetting who you are, Dan. You weren't in the first race that much. Anyway, Nelson is leading this pack through. Jeff is making a move on Steve again, is he? He tucks on the inside. Steve hangs it round the outside. They climb up the hill. They're all over each other here, trying to make a way through. We'll stick with this battle just for now, because this is exciting stuff. This is exactly what we want to see in this league. And they dive down the inside and they go 3 wide down the hill. Looks like Steve and Jeff are Jeff's going to make a move on Steve. They're 3 wide in front. They go bash, bash, bosh. They're through and Steve gets caught up and he's off. And somehow Nelson and Jeff make their way through. And looks like Jeff's going to get Nelson here, is he? Let's take another look and see what happened there. that is how the chaos unfolded, and that leaves us with a lot of carnage to clean up, really. So we jump a bit further forward, and we can see that Jeff is hunting down Nelson with Chris and Jamie just behind. I believe Ricky's drove off into the sunset with his reverse grid pole. Oh, and Jamie's made a lunge on Chris, but Chris manages to hold him off. We're more interested in watching Nelson go down the hill, though. I wonder what's happened there in the background. We'll have to wait and see. Looks like Chris still has the edge on Jamie for now as they come up the hill. Sorry, into turn 1 and now up the hill. I do like my hills. Damon Hill, Phil Hill, Graham Hill, they're all great. But anyway, looks like Jeff's just trying to weigh up when to make his move here. That Ferrari is an absolute rocket ship in a straight line, but can't take a curb to save its life. Jeff's got a much better run here, though. Is he going to go around the outside of Chaos Corner? You see there, the Ferrari's just pulling ahead. Is Jeff going to hang it round? He does. They go side by side, now into the trickiest turn on the track, at least in my opinion. Oh, and they've knocked into each other. The cameraman says, I don't want to see that. Nelson scot-free for the second time as we see Jeff just limp off there in the background. And because I'm an artistic git, here's the angle from Chris Palmer's suspension as we see, Nelson and Jeff try and make a baby there, but unfortunately they weren't successful. So we jump forward a couple of laps to our 6th lap, and we can see Nelson, Chris and Jamie all battling as Jamie dives down one side here, and it gives Chris the inside line still. What's going to happen here? Are they going to go through safely? They are. There's a little bit of a kiss from Jamie on Chris's rear end, but they look like they're through okay. Down the hill they come, past the start-finish line. Well, there's the start-finish line, and they're past it. Looks like Nelson's just got away a little bit here, the power of that Ferrari. But he will struggle on the downhill Essie section. Down they come. You can see how much the Porsche and the BMW close up here. Now has Chris got the run on Nelson here? It looks like he might have. He dives down the inside the Porsche. Is he going to swing his rear end through? He does. Through they go. And is this going to give Jamie a chance here as they tuck into the slipstream down this big long straight? Nail to toe, nose to toe. Put whichever body part you want where, but they're going down. Oh, but we're going to jump back and we're going to see Steve, Jeff, Dan and Paul, I think that is. Down they come into the chicane, and you can see, oh, Steve's looped it. He came a bit too quick there on the absolute carnage that is in front of him. Looks like Jamie has had an accident too. Let's see what's happened. Hold on. Oh, we'll stay here first of all as Jeff hangs around the inside of Dan, does he? Looks like Dan got through, and they're going to both chase down Paul now. And just for more artistic value, let's watch the cars come down the hill in slow-mo. You can see they're 3 wide. Nelson backs out sensibly. Jamie goes in a bit too hot. His rear end takes out Chris and they go sliding off. Meanwhile, just behind them, you can see that Paul slows down to try and be sensible. Steve can't slow down the car quite quick enough. It loops it round, and that allows Jeff and Dan to go through. What a beautiful view that is. Meanwhile, let's take another look at that move as Dan dived down the inside of Mr. Sharp as they come into the back of... I do think that's Paul, but God knows with my commentary these days. Dan climbs up the hill and he dives down the outside of Paul here. Is he going to try and make a move into the right-hander? He's not. He's cooked that a little bit, and Paul's gone a bit too hot. He's off, and that should allow Dan and Jeff to go through. So we jump forward a few laps here and we can see Dan still being chased by Jeff, but pulling away slightly. Now chasing down the, I don't know what kind of stone is a rock which can't be moved. You have to think of some sort of idiom here because I can't. My brain's gone. Anyway, Dan is chasing down Nelson here for that second place. So we rejoin the action as Dan is right on the rear end of Nelson, coming down the ski slope like S is. into the left-hander. You can see how much better that BMW handles that curb. He's going to get so much of a better run out here. Tucks him behind for the strip screen. Comes outside for the overtake. Is he going to hang it round the outside? Seems to be the overtaking manoeuvre of the day. He does, and he's through into second place. Meanwhile, while all that was going on, we can see here Mr. Jamie Nicholson coming up on the back of Mr. Paul Nicholson. Not related. Jamie tucks it on the inside. I'll give him a good run down to... I don't even know where we are anymore. Oh, we're going up to the chicane, I think. Paul lets him through, though. And just, lets him through. And that gives Chris the chance to chase down these two. Now it's time for pit stops. And here's Mr. Sharp showing everyone how it's done to do the pit lane entry correctly. Take note of that for later on in the race. And you can see there Mr. Jamie Nicholson following him in. I think this is the time when the pit window opened, so you can see a few of the cars that picked up damage early in the race are now jumping in to get repairs. Now we see Jeff come up on a slowing Brian here. Brian holds it onto the inside lines, give Jeff plenty of space. Jeff makes his intentions clear, and through he goes. Now we see Steve here trying to make his move on Brian as well to follow him through, and it looks like he's cocked that up just a little bit too quick and he's spun off, and that allows Mr. Paul Nicholson to go through, and Ricky, our runaway leader after his reverse grip hole, he's through, and he's now lapping half the field. So here we can see he's got a much better run out of that slow right-hander. BMW power versus Porsche power. Is it Porsche or Porsche? Well, let other people argue over that. But this means that Will has the run, but he's going to be on the outside. Is Chris going to be able to hold it? No, looks like Will's got the job done before they even reach the corners. Meanwhile, a bit further back in P5 and 6, we can see Jeff trying to make a move on Chris Hulse here. Chris Hulse hanging it round the outside. Jeff puts it down the inside, says, I'm having this, thank you very much. They're still by side though, and I think Chris will get a good run here, will he? No, it looks like Jeff is through cleanly and nicely. Oh no, Chris is having a go at him as they come into the chicane again. Down the hill they go, into the braking zone, and Chris has got him clean. I think it's safe to say that one of these cars might be running a little less downforce than the other. As you can see, Jeff gets a much better run out of the corners, but then Chris pulls away on the longer straights. Down the into the hairpin and then into the S's. Jeff is normally really good at coming out of the last corner here, the left-hander. That's coming up now. He normally gets a really good run here. Will he be able to do it again? They close up on each other. Now, will he go left or will he go right? He's gone right for the outside line. Chris holds on the inside nicely though. Now, who's going to get the better run up the straight? And will Jamie Nicholson come and join the party? Jeff makes a lunge down the inside. Is he close enough? He is. He's just plonked himself there and said, I'm having that. Now, will Jamie get a run? No, he's decided that he's going to push Chris up the hill and tuck him behind. That should give him a nice run up into turn one, though. Which way is he going to go? He's going to go down the inside. He backs out, though, and lets Chris have the corner. And he's done the switch back. He's side by side coming up into the next right-hand corner. Looks like Chris is just managing to put his car in all the right places. Now we're joining a battle here as we have Paul chasing down Steve as they both come to lap Brian. Steve tries to take it down the inside, gets it a bit wrong there, slides off and is lucky not to collect Paul. Steve takes the long way back onto the track, gets it sorted and off he goes. Now, we've not mentioned him, but here's the impervious, the absolutely unbreakable Ricky Worrell as he goes off the track. Yeah, spins it round. Oh, no, he's thinking about it. He lets Will Thomas go through. Ricky, you do know where you're going here, don't you? That's it. Now you're facing the right way, and off you go, sir. As Mr. Sharp and Mr. Palmer go through. I think it's fair to say that Ricky has crumpled that fag packet up, and he has thrown away a certain victory here from the reverse grid pole. And just to rub it in a little bit further, let's have a look at Ricky Worrell, reverse grid pole. Let's have a look at his pit entry here. So he comes in a little bit hot and decides that... do I need to say more? I think it's fair to say that if you're going to screw it up in a better way than Ricky does. As this poor attempt at Chris has gone through. Poor attempt at I don't know what this is, Ricky. But that's your race that you've thrown away there, mate. Meanwhile, there's some fantastic racing between Ricky and Chris a bit further on, and Ricky's round again. Well, if you've made it this long into the video, I think it's fair. It's easy to see how Ricky's had some time off, and yeah, he needs to think about maybe a bit more time in the seat to get his eye back in. Meanwhile, just to prove that everyone is fallible, here is the normally unfallible Steve Everson coming into the curves. And, oh, he's lost it. He's gone wide. Driftastic. Straight into the wall. And that is a day. And we haven't mentioned him much since his opening laps of heroics, but here's Mr. Dan Slattery to take the win. And yes, that is the end of today's race. And that leaves us with our race classification. So we end up with Mr. Dan Slattery winning the race by over 10 seconds to Mr. Will Thomas. Behind them, another 12 seconds or so back, we had Jeff, followed very closely by Chris. Jamie a few more seconds back, and Ricky, reverse grid pole and throw it away, ended up 6th. Behind them, we had Paul, who ran a solid race, with Brian in 8th. Nelson finished 9th with Chris in 10th. And behind them, we had Steve, who gave up a few laps before the end. And behind him, we had Steve, who gave up a few laps from the start. And that leaves our championship standings, where, if I am reading this correctly, we have Mr. Dan Slattery in the lead with 183 points. Behind him, a good 40 or so points behind, we have Will Thomas, followed by Jeff and Mark. Jamie Nicholson just behind them in 5th. Chris in 6th. And behind them, we have Chris Palmer in 7th, with Axel 8th, Brian in 9th, Steve in 10th. Joint on points with Josh in 11th, and behind them we have Paul, followed by Steve, Nelson, Martin, Travis, and the legend that is Tuggy. We hope to see you all next week, where we will be racing at Road America in the GT86s for our endurance race. Hope to see you all there. Goodbye.